And sometimes when you get to the end of the day or the end of the week and you say, oh, I didn't get any work done, actually what we're thinking is, I was so busy responding to everyone else's requests, I didn't get the important things on my to-do list done. Welcome to the Independent School Podcast. Thinking and acting strategically is the key to both securing the future of your school and helping to build a more equal and just world. My name's Juliette Corbett. I'm a consultant, speaker and facilitator specialising in helping independent schools. In this podcast, I translate tried and tested strategy and fundraising techniques into a language that works for schools. So if you're a senior leader in a private school and you want your daily work to feel less exhausting and more strategic, and if you want to once more feel the joy of making the world a better place through education, then you're in the right place. Welcome, and let's get started on this week's episode. Hello and welcome to this week's episode where we're going to be talking about inbox management and the fact that your inbox is not your job. There is much more that you are being employed to do, which is beyond management of your inbox. Now, I don't often get into really nitty-gritty detailed episodes around how to manage your working life. Normally, I assume that you've got all this covered and we're focusing in on more strategic issues of how to find the right strategy for your team, for your school. But actually, I think that there are some fundamental tactics, if you like, personal effectiveness tactics, which if you can master, will make it far easier throughout your career to really have that strategic impact that you want to have the time to be doing the strategic thinking, to be really moving ahead on the strategic projects that you're trying to focus on. So what I'm going to be doing is, this is a first episode in 3-part series where I'm going to be talking about some tactics for personal effectiveness. So we're going to move a little bit away from strategy. We're talking about really specific things that you can be doing on a day-to-day basis, which are going to enhance your personal effectiveness and then enable you to carve out the time to be strategic. So in this first episode, we are going to be talking about inbox management. Now, I remember a long time ago, at the very early days of my career, someone saying to me, and I can't remember who, I wish I could and credit them here, but I can't remember. But someone said to me, no one gets promoted because their inbox is dealt with each day. And that really landed with me, both at the time, and I've remembered it all these years later, because it really articulates in quite a punchy kind of way the fact that dealing with your inbox each day is not what you're actually paid to do. It's not how your success is going to be judged when it comes to your annual appraisal, when people are thinking about moving you up to the next level. And that's because your inbox is not your job. Your job is to deliver the strategic objectives that are embedded within your job description, that are the areas where you're trying to push the school forward to make change, or alternatively, even if your job is more operationally focused, it's going to be measured much more broadly than just your inbox. It will be because you've got an efficient, effective system for delivering the day-to-day operations and activities of the school. Now, there might be 1 or 2 exceptions. I absolutely accept that. But generally speaking, you are not going to be noticed. Your performance is not going to be noticed as being exceptional because someone's looking over your shoulder to check that you're dealing with your inbox effectively. Now, clearly, the other end of the spectrum isn't good either. If you completely ignore your inbox, you're going to get in trouble quite quickly. So we need to find a balance. We need to find a way that we can be in control. So in this first episode of this 3-part series, I'm going to be talking about inbox management, but actually this idea of being in control of your time is something that we're taking up in the second episode in this series. And then in the third episode, I'm also going to be branching out and talking about some online tools that you can be using to become much more efficient in order to, again, carve out more time for strategic projects. So this time around, I'm going to be focusing on some habits that you can form around email, which are going to be more healthy to allow you to control and contain the amount of time that your email takes. But I'm also going to be helicoptering up to just give you a little bit more of an overview about why this is such an issue. Why is it that it's a real problem for email to take over our working lives. And we're going to be thinking about the difference between reactive and proactive work. And we're going to also be thinking about the difference between multitasking and focused work. And once we understand those two themes, it'll give us a little bit more structure to think about those email habits that you want to cultivate. So many people have told me that this podcast really helps them, which is great because helping people is why I create these weekly episodes. I also hear from a lot of people who need a bit more support. And for those schools, I facilitate strategy away days for governors and leadership teams. I guide heads and chairs of governors through the creation and implementation of new strategic plans. And I lead regular one-to-one strategy advice calls with heads and directors of development. And the best part of my job is hearing from those people I work with that they're clearer about what to prioritise day to day. They're better able to lead change in their schools, and they feel happier and more confident that they're making good strategic decisions. So anytime you feel like you need a bit of extra help, just drop me a message so we can have a chat. You'll find my contact details at www.consultjuliet.co.uk. Okay, so first of all, we're going to be thinking about our first theme. We're going to be thinking about reactive work versus proactive work. Now, when we think about dealing with our inbox, dealing with emails that are popping up every single minute of the day, what we are doing is reactive work. We are responding to other people requesting action or information from us. Now, there are many other examples of reactive work. So if you have an open door policy for your office and there are people constantly wandering in, asking questions or asking you to do things, again, all of that work will be reactive. Reactive work is really important. We want to be responsive to the community that we're serving. So whether that's in an admissions and marketing team, thinking about being responsive to potential families, whether that's being responsive to current pupils and families, if you're working within the academic side or the pastoral side of the school, thinking about the development office being responsive to alumni, it is really important that we are reactive and responsive to the communities we're serving. But, and there's a big but here, strategic projects are almost always proactive. And that is because strategic projects normally, and then again, there might be a few exceptions, but normally strategic projects are about specific changes that you're trying to make to a system or to a culture or to the mindset of a team. Whatever it is, those strategic projects are almost always proactive in nature. Now, what tends to happen, for a number of reasons, is that our working week tends to get swamped with reactive work, and we tend to fail to carve out enough time for proactive work because we're constantly responding to people around us and then failing to carve out the time which we need to actually deliver strategic change and strategic projects successfully, or in some cases, even to do the strategic thinking, which enables us to identify the right strategic projects to be pursuing. Now, this difference between reactive and proactive work is a really interesting mindset to adopt within your working week. And one of the takeaways I want you to think about as a result of listening to this episode is to actually just check in, maybe on a daily basis at the end of your day, how much of my work today was reactive and how much was proactive. And sometimes when you get to the end of the day or the end of the week and you say, oh, I didn't get any work done, actually what we're thinking is, I was so busy responding to everyone else's requests, I didn't get the important things on my to-do list done. And that is the balance between reactive and proactive work. So one of the reasons it's really important that we manage our inbox and that we are in control of our time is we want to get this balance right between reactive and proactive work. The second big picture theme that I'm going to invite you to think about with regards to looking at this issue around inbox management is to do with multitasking versus focused work. Now, there's a bit of a culture that the more that we can multitask, the better we are at being effective. And this has been developed over a number of decades. There are kind of stereotypes and assumptions about, who might be better at multitasking than other people. And actually, this is extremely unhelpful. The research, and I'm going to link to some research in the episode notes if you want to kind of look at the evidence base behind what I'm about to say. The research shows that we are really, really rubbish at multitasking. As human beings, all of us, we're not actually multitasking. We are very quickly switching between multiple tasks. And in the process of switching continually, we are reducing our productivity. And that's to do with the fact that our brains actually take time to do that switch between the different tasks we're trying to multitask on. And so we're not really focusing on any one of those tasks particularly effectively. And so the recommendations from the research tend to kind of point in the direction of focused work being much more productive than multitasking. So one of the other things that we can do, take away as a result of this episode, is to really think about, okay, are we trying to multitask too much? And even if that feels like it's a good thing, it's kind of like a badge of honour, I can multitask, is this actually increasing your productivity? And my suggestion would be that it's not. If we look at the research into the way our brains work, it's highly unlikely that multitasking is serving you well. Okay, so we've talked about those two big themes. We now know that proactive work is critically important, but it tends to get crowded out by reactive work, including inbox. We also know that focused work is much more productive than multitasking, including trying to do email at the same time as doing everything else that you're trying to do. So what can we learn from that? Now, first of all, a big flashing warning light here. The next part of this episode, I'm going to be talking about what works for me. It might be different for you. Everyone is different. It would be super boring if we were all the same. So let's harness that difference. But there are some things here which actually work for a lot of people, work for most people, I would be bold enough to say, around email habits that I think you should at least try. So, number one, please turn off desktop reminders from your email. You do not need little flashing boxes on mine comes up on the bottom right hand side, maybe it's different for you, but wherever it flashes up on your screen, you do not need that interrupting your work continually through the day. There are a couple of roles within schools where immediately being accessible is critically important, and obviously that would include any safeguarding and alerts that are coming through to members of the pastoral team during the day. If it's critically important that you do get some notifications immediately, set up a different system that's not based on email. So that might be a different way of messaging through to your phone, which actually pings on a certain type of notification, but not on every type of notification. But you really, really need to turn off those desktop reminders. And that is because it is constantly dragging you back into reactive work rather than proactive work, and because it is encouraging you to continually multitask rather than focus. So please turn off those desktop reminders. You do not need them. Secondly, you do not need your inbox open all day. There is the constant temptation, and in actual fact there is some research, and I'll link to it again in the episode notes, which talks about the dopamine hit that you get by refreshing your email and then by completing an email and kind of ticking it off as done. You do not need to be constantly dipping into your email throughout the day, and therefore you do not need your inbox open in the background throughout the day. Ideally, you want a couple of times in the day when you will check your email. You will triage it, in a sense. You will get a sense of what's really critically important that you respond to straight away, what's important that you need to respond to by the end of the day, let's say, and what is it in there that either needs to be responded to over a much longer time frame, a week, a month, or is just information only that you can read at some future date. So triage your email at set times of day, and then diary block times when you do go in and spend time in email. We know email is important. It's an important method of communication. So it is a part of your job to get through those emails, but you do not need it open all day. It is massively draining on your productivity to have your email open all day. Now, the other final thing I'm going to talk about email habits is, for me, the idea of inbox zero is absolutely crazy. I'll be completely honest. So inbox zero is a method of managing your inbox where you get your inbox down to 0 messages by the end of each day. you filter off all messages into folders, which are folders which have been things which have been dealt with, things which are for information only, folders for different projects and so on. Now, some people really like it, and if you do, that's fine, as long as you're not spending too much time on it. But for me, I would spend the whole time just managing my inbox. I don't use folders at all. I used to, but now the search functions within email is so sophisticated. I can search for specific words by date, by name, by different combinations of search kind of terms. I don't need to put things into folders. I use stars in order to identify emails that I need to come back to and have some action with. Some people, not me, but some people can then use different types of stars so that you can rank the importance of those actions that you need to do. I don't go to that level of detail, but you can do. I can see how that could be useful. But from my point of view, zero inbox is actually an unattainable kind of stereotype of efficiency. In actual fact, it's not an effective way of working from my perspective anyway. Now, absolutely disagree with me. If you're shouting at your podcast device right now saying, but I love my inbox zero, that's fine. If it works for you, go with it. Just be very careful that you're not spending huge amounts of time actually moving your email around different parts and dedicating your whole working week to reactive email response. So if you want to try and change your email habits, you want to try and keep your email closed, you want to have times of day when you check it, you want to turn off all your reminders, you're not being dragged into the idea of really organising your inbox through inbox zero. These are habits. These are, in some cases, actually chemically driven dopamine hit habits, which it can be quite challenging to change and shift over time. But if you talk to people around you, talk to your boss, your peers, your team, talk to everyone about the boundaries that you're going to be setting around your email, and agree that you're going to try a couple of things out over the next fortnight and reflect, get feedback from others if necessary, and then see what works and keep what works, adapt what doesn't work. This is a case of you finding what's working for you in order to control the amount of time the email is taking you. I've also actually really had success with this in the past when I've done it as part of a team. So talk to everybody else on your team and encourage others to join you, to approach your email in a different way and to keep each other accountable. Make sure that your service levels in terms of what you're delivering to your community doesn't drop. You want to make sure you are still responsive to people around you. That is really important. But the measurement of success is that you are managing to focus in on the strategic projects that you're carving out time for. And this is the flip side. This is what we're going to be talking about in next week's episode. Once we've managed to control inbox, it's not just inbox, it's all that reactive work that we try to do. Once we've controlled that, then we need to think about what are we going to be focusing on instead. And those are those strategic projects that you need to be proactively working on in a focused way. We're going to be talking about how to do that next week, and when we're going to talk about diary blocking. But in the meantime, I want to leave you with one final thought, and this is not going to be applicable for everybody. If you are finding it quite hard to control your inbox and to realise that your inbox is not your job, it might be that your inbox feels safe. Your inbox is within your comfort zone. 99% of the emails that you get in, you are fully capable of dealing with. No one's giving you kind of hassle and grief in your inbox. You feel quite comfortable, you feel quite safe, you feel productive in terms of what you're managing to do each day. It might be that the reason that you're staying in your inbox is because stepping outside that inbox and to be focusing on those strategic projects that you should be working on, or the strategic thinking that's required to identify those projects, might be a bit beyond your comfort zone, might feel a little bit more scary than your inbox. And so we retreat back into our safe inbox. It's not true of everybody. I'll have to admit, it has been true of me in the past at different points in my career. Noticing if that's happening can be very beneficial, because then being able to scale back the inbox and the habit forming process around spending too much time in your email and carving out time for those strategic thinking and strategic projects is really important, because otherwise you're really not delivering the things that you need to be delivering within your work. That's it for this week. I'd love to hear your feedback. What do you find the most challenging around controlling the amount of time you're spending in your inbox? Is it an issue for you? Is it something you've mastered many years ago perhaps, and you've got really tried and tested ideas that you'd like to share with me? Either way, do get in touch. I love to hear your feedback. That's it for this time. I'll talk to you again next week. Bye-bye then. Thanks for listening to the Independent School Podcast, the podcast that helps senior leaders in private schools to think and act more strategically, both because they want to secure the future of their school and because they want to help build a more equal and just world. You can listen in everywhere that podcasts are available, and if you want to catch up on previous episodes or follow any of the links that I've mentioned today, just head over to www.consultjuliet.co.uk/podcast.